So welcome to the 2026 end of year setup webinar. Well, this is really more of a workshop because the idea behind it is that as I go through things, you'll be able to kind of follow along and we can troubleshoot things as they come up. So it is meant to be fairly interactive. So please feel free to ask questions throughout. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask them live or put them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat either way. Um, what we're basically trying to do, and I'm thanks for being here for those of you who have been able to join me live. I I definitely appreciate being able to kind of have the conversational nature of this particular workshop. It looks like Lauren has joined us as well, so welcome. Um, Basically what we're trying to do today is get started in the sort of the cleanup process. The end of year closeout will happen at the end of June, early July. Every library may do it on a slightly different date, but usually right around that end of fiscal year. So what we try to do around this time of year is get an idea of what is still out there for you that has been ordered and when to expect it. And then also figure out, are there things that you're just not expected to get this fiscal year that you want to go ahead and clean up? That way, when we come to that end of year closeout, everything's really ready for the closeout and then the propagation of next year's funds. So today we're going to basically be taking a look at invoices and purchase orders that may have some lingering issues. Get an idea of what needs to be dealt with between now and June, and take a very quick look at some funds so that you kind of have an idea of what to expect when you close out those funds. As I said, please feel free to follow along live if you're able to. I'll definitely pause here and there to give you the opportunity to try the same searches I'm doing. Some of what we'll be talking about today will be reports. You may not have time to fully set up the reports to run, though if you're able to, I definitely encourage you to. But even outside of that, there'll be a few things that you may be able to do live and certainly some opportunities for questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, we are going to talk about resolving purchase orders and invoices. That's our main goal for the day. We're going to talk a little bit about running end of year reports. What I'd recommend is that you run them now, either during the workshop or after, and then run them again as you get closer to the end of the year, just to make sure that things are being resolved. We'll talk a little bit about preparing for the idea of rolling over your encumbrances and what that means. And we'll talk a little bit about deactivating funds and how to make sure that those funds are in the right shape for that deactivation, but we won't actually do any deactivation today. And actually we're almost certainly not going to do an end of year dry run. If we end up having time, we can, but my guess is that we're going to run out of time before we get there. So, as I said earlier, please feel free to ask questions live if you need to. Or put them in the chat. And it does look like several more people have joined us. So welcome to those of you who are just coming in. Let's go ahead and get started with the fiscal year closeout process. So first, let's talk a little bit about what that process is, what we mean when we talk about it. Essentially, the fiscal year closeout is a series of actions that allow you to close out your funds for the current fiscal year, and then when appropriate, roll over remaining balances or encumbrances into funds for the next fiscal year. Basically, it allows you to put a stop to the 2026 fiscal year and go ahead and start your 2027 fiscal year. Preparing for this process does require ensuring that your purchase orders are fully accounted for, that future spending on the current year has been frozen. So what we're going to do today is get you in a position to do that. This session is going to walk through the process of getting the current year in order, and we're going to talk a little bit about a checklist that we recommend to get you ready. Then after ensuring that all that housekeeping has been completed, sometime in late June or early July, I'll put out a poll to see what works best for people. We will actually come back together and do a dry run of the closeout process, and then make sure that you're ready for that actual live closeout when your library's closeout date comes along. So the fiscal year closeout is basically just the process of putting an end to this fiscal year and starting the next one. And today we're going to talk about what you need to do between now and the end of the fiscal year to be ready for that process. Before we get into this, are there any questions that people have, either about what we're going to be doing today or what you need to look forward to over the next few months? I definitely see that several of you in here have been doing acquisitions for at least a year or two, so this won't be your first closeout, but there may be one or two new people as well. So, and obviously this is a process you do once a year. So I would not be able to remember every step of it from year to year for something that I do once a year. So if you have questions, chances are really good that somebody else has the same question. So please don't be afraid to ask them as we go. All right, so we're going to start by taking a look at the year-end checklist. There is a copy of it in the acquisitions knowledge book. I will put the link to that in the chat. And basically the checklist is fairly small. Before you can run the end of year procedure, which again we'll do near the end of the fiscal year sometime in late June. You need to wrap up your current fiscal year first by activating or deleting pending purchase orders. If your library rolls over encumbrances, you can allow purchase orders to roll over into the next fiscal year as well. Most Cardinal libraries do not allow that though. So if you do not allow encumbrances of any sort, you do need to make sure that all of your purchase orders have either been fully activated or fully deleted. And well as received. So any items that you currently have on order, one of the things we're going to do today is figure out what those items are so that you can keep a special eye out for ensuring that they're received before the end of your fiscal year. Then you need to make sure that all of those items, whether they are received or on order, are invoiced by the end of the fiscal year. There's no expectation that that invoicing has happened by today. Obviously, your vendors probably are not, rushing to get the last of your orders in by April. That really is going to happen over the course of the next couple months, but you want to get an idea of what you're looking for to ensure it gets received and marked paid, so that you are prepared to close all open invoices by the end of the year. Another thing that we're going to talk about today is the concept of a year-end freeze. This is not an official function within Evergreen, but what this is basically is your library setting a date by which you would no longer place new orders for this fiscal year. So you may have that set for April 30th or sometime in May, or even right up to the moment, though I'd recommend that you give yourself a little cushion if you're not rolling over any kind of encumbrances. And so figure out what that date is, and basically between now and that date, you want to make sure that you are aware of all of the orders that are out there. And then between that date and the actual end of the year, you want to make sure that everything is then cleaned up, either received and closed or canceled. So what we'll talk about today is how to get a sort of a view of those statuses. So you can refer back to that end of year checklist in the knowledge books at any time. We're going to kind of walk through it today. We're going to start by talking about resolving open purchase orders. So open purchase orders are essentially purchase orders where the materials have not been either received or canceled. So for the most part, what we're talking about are those that are still in a pending status or still in a status of on order. We're going to start by looking at pending purchase orders. Basically, between now and June, you want to make sure that you have either activated or deleted any purchase orders. If you want to go ahead closer to the end of June, start thinking ahead to purchases for the 2027 fiscal year, you can create some pending purchase orders and not activate them until after the start of the new year. But anything that you have pending right now, you want to think about whether or not this is something that you're actually planning to order, and you want to get that cleaned up. So the easiest way to clean it up, obviously, is to activate it and put in that order, especially if you're not using EDI and you have ordered these materials from your vendor, but you just have not marked them as on order in Evergreen yet. Make sure you're doing that. The second thing is a little bit more complicated, but we will go through that, and that's to cancel it. So if you created a purchase order, then never actually put in that order, and you've decided that you're not going to, then you do need to cancel it just to clean everything up. The process of cancellation, we have an automatic process that runs, it might be nightly, definitely every few days, that will cancel any purchase orders that have two things true about them. The first is that there are no line items attached to the purchase order. And the second is that the purchase order name includes the word delete. So if you have anything that you've decided that you're not going to be moving forward with that order, that's what you'll need to do in order to remove it. So let's go through the process of doing both of those things. And in going through this process, I'll also show you how you can find those purchase orders that are in that pending state. So we're going to come into our acquisitions search. So that's just under the acquisitions menu and general search, and we're going to come into the purchase order search tab here. We're going to make sure that our ordering agency reflects wherever you're placing your orders from. So in some systems, that's actually at the system level. In many systems, it's at a specific branch level. You may actually have to do this for all of the branches in your system. It really depends on how you have your ordering set up. So if you do have a situation where each branch is sort of ordering independently, but you need to be in charge of getting all of the purchase orders cleaned up for the closeout, then you will need to go through and do this for each branch. So in this case, I'm just going to be doing a single branch here. In some cases, you may be doing your full system. This is only going to work. So if I were to set this to Bunkum, it actually wouldn't work because I do not have my ordering agency set to Bunkum for any purchase orders. Basically, what you're setting here is who the ordering agency associated with a purchase order is. And if it's your system, this will work. If it is an individual branch, you do have to go into that branch, which means if you have multiple branches, you have to do each one of them. Because simply setting it at the system level will not result in anything. I'll even show you. So if I do this search, I have nothing to display. Even though one of the branches within the Bunkum system is going to have purchase orders come up, when I just set it at the system level, it's not looking at every branch underneath the system. It's looking directly at that system level. Sort of like how when you are looking at items owned by a library system, you have to look at each branch because the system itself does not own items. For the most part in acquisitions, systems don't order materials, branches do. We have a couple of exceptions to that, but for the most part, you're going to need to look at the branch level. So hopefully you're aware of how you have it set up in your library and you're able to figure it out. If you try a system search and nothing comes up, that's probably a good indicator that you need to be looking at the branch level. So hopefully I didn't confuse people too much with that long explanation of choosing your ordering agency, but that's the first thing you're going to do is put in your ordering agency here. The next thing we're going to do is look for a purchase order status of pending, and this is going to show us all of the current purchase orders that have not yet been activated. Now, there are some libraries in here who may have some really old stuff that never got activated. If you want to kind of remove that from your search so it doesn't kind of clutter things up, you can add an extra line here and you can put in purchase order creation time on or after July 1st. And so that's going to allow you to kind of focus this onto this fiscal year. And one of the reasons that we do this now is to help people to keep those purchase orders clean so that you don't end up having like a long list of unactivated purchase orders from previous fiscal years that are never going to move forward with an order. So this is not necessary if you don't have older ones, but if you do, it can be helpful. So basically at this point, what we're looking for is those purchase orders from this fiscal year that have not actually been ordered. Um, and in my case, I've got two of them. So I basically need to kind of go into these and figure out what I'm going to do with them. You'll probably have more because you're actually ordering real materials. So one of the things that you want to do and think about as you're doing this step is, are these purchase orders that I'm still adding line items to, and they'll be activated at some point in the near future? Are these purchase orders that the purchase has already gone through manually with the vendor and I just need to activate it here? Are these purchase orders that need to be activated and have a purchase go out via EDI? Or are these purchase orders that I don't want anymore? So you're going to have a few different potential categories depending on how you place orders in your library. And so it can be helpful to sort of have an idea of which purchase order fits into which category. In my case, I'm basically going to say that one of these needs to be activated and one of these needs to be deleted. So I'm really only kind of hitting two of those categories. So let's start with this one, this first one here. And I'm just going to open it up. And we're going to go ahead and place this order. So if you are using EDI, then of course the process of activating the order will place it. If you don't use EDI, then whatever your sort of standard practice is for this, go ahead and follow that. If it's a situation where you place the order with the vendor and then you activate, then make sure that you're doing that. Go into your vendor and actually place that order. If, on the other hand, you tend to activate first and then finalize the order with the vendor, follow that process. Don't activate this one unless you're definitely going to order it from your vendor, though. So make sure that you are following your procedure for that. I'm going to go ahead and just click activate order, and that's going to just move the status of the purchase order to on order, and all of my materials are now on order. So if I come back into this search and I redo it, I only have one purchase order remaining that's pending. Any questions about that? That shouldn't be too much of a shock to anybody, just because it's part of your standard ordering process. But are there any questions or concerns about sort of making sure that things are activated and in a status of on order? Okay, and like I said at the beginning, this is just prep for the end of the year closeout. If you have orders that are still in process where you are still adding materials to that order, you don't have to make sure that you're doing that right now. You don't have to close them or activate them right now. Just be aware of what you have. It might even be helpful to put together a little spreadsheet or a list of all of the pending purchase orders that you have right now and what needs to happen with them. Do they need to have additional materials added? Do you need to wait until you have placed the order with the vendor to activate? Can you go ahead and activate now, or do you need to cancel this order? And kind of have a running list of that between now and the end of the year, or now and when your freeze date is, so that you know if there's anything left over once you get to that date, you kind of know what to do with it. So we have gone ahead and activated one of our pending orders. Our second pending order, I'm actually going to say we're not going to move forward with this order, and I'm going to go ahead and cancel it. So to do that, I'm going to open up the order. And the first thing I'm going to do is select my line items. Now, I only have 3 on here, so I'm just going to select all. You might want to do this one at a time just to be absolutely certain of everything that you're canceling. I'm not going to put them in a state of canceled because they were never ordered, so I don't need to cancel them. All I need to do is delete from the actions menu up here at the top. I believe, yeah, no, it looks like you can't do that individually from the action menu at the line item level. If you wanted to delete one at a time, you can basically select one and then delete it from the top action menu. So you can do that in whatever way makes the most sense to you. So I'm going to go ahead and select all, and then I'm going to delete selected line items. It gives me just a warning, making sure that I definitely want to do this. And so I'll confirm that by clicking apply. And so now I have no items left on this purchase order. And I'm going to come in here to the purchase order name, and I'm just going to rename it delete. And so now that automated process that we run will come across this purchase order. It will see that it fits both criteria for deletion. It has no line items attached, and its PO name includes the word delete. You can retain your original PO name and just put the word delete at the front of the name, but delete does need to be the first word in the name. Once it's deleted, you'll have no record of it though, so I would actually recommend just calling it, just changing the name to delete. PO names don't have to be unique, so that shouldn't be a problem. And so that's it. I don't need to do anything else to this one. So I'm going to just go ahead and close it. And if I redo this search, I continue to get this one. This one will continue to come up as a pending order until that deletion process has run. But I can see that it's ready for deletion because the name is delete. I may also, yeah, no, I can't see how many line items are attached to it. So I can't double check that from this grid. I can do that from the line item search grid, or I can go into the purchase order just to make sure that any purchase order with the name of delete does not have any line items. Any questions about that deletion process? And if you do have any purchase orders that you can go ahead and do this for, go ahead and do it. I would definitely recommend taking a moment to kind of get that part of it started. So if you have not yet done this search, I'd recommend taking a moment now just to do it. Make sure that you understand what you have that's pending. If you have quite a few of them, then I definitely recommend making a list, just so that you can keep track between now and the end of June. So I'm going to give everybody a little time to get started on that. All right. Is anybody running into anything confusing or having trouble with any part of this? Have any questions? All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about invoices next. We can certainly come back to any issues with purchase orders, though, if people do have them. So resolving purchase orders, fairly straightforward. Basically, order what you need to order, cancel what you don't plan to order, and just keep an eye on things before the closeout to make sure that those orders are actually coming through. One tricky bit to that is that if you do have things that are canceled between now and the end of the year, and it's a purchase order that, if you have a purchase order where the whole thing has been canceled, you can, especially if you're not using EDI, so you have to sort of manually deal with this, you can go in and cancel the items, and that will remove any kind of encumbrance or anything like that. And then you can still delete it after it's been activated. So if you do have a purchase order that has been activated, but then becomes canceled before being fulfilled, you can cancel the items on the purchase order. At that point, you should be able to delete them and then mark that purchase order to be deleted. Don't do that for items that are in a state of on order. Change their state to canceled first. Otherwise, you're going to retain the encumbrances, which is going to mess up your funds at the closeout. So I think that's hopefully not something that a lot of people are having to deal with, but especially with the Baker and Taylor stuff this year, you might have a larger number than usual of odd purchase orders that go nowhere. So definitely worth keeping a close eye on it. In fact, I would even recommend that maybe um, taking a look at your on order purchase orders, um, and just double checking for any that are Baker and Taylor that are still kind of coming up, because those are going to need to be canceled and deleted as well. So that definitely worth taking that extra step to do. Oh, you might even be able, now that I think about it, yeah, you can, in fact, you can do a search for purchase orders that are in a state of on order with a provider of Baker and Taylor. I won't have any because my sort of fake order pack does not actually do any acquisitions. So all of my fake orders here, none of them are Baker and Taylor, but I could switch to another library that does use Baker and Taylor. Maybe. We'll do this. So by doing that, I can kind of see what do I have that's still listed as on order from Baker and Taylor, clearly not going to be fulfilled at this point. And so then I would want to come in here. I would want to take all of these on order line items. I would want to cancel them. And then from there, oh, I may not be able to delete them actually. I'm going to do a little bit of digging onto what to do in these particular cases if you're not able to delete them once they've been canceled. I believe there is a way to do that, but I have to figure out what it is. So I will be in touch with people over the course of the next couple of months with what to do with these sort of perhaps lingering Baker and Taylor orders. So if you do have any of those, please let me know and we'll make sure that we get those taken care of. All right. So now any questions about purchase orders? Let's go ahead and talk about invoices. So resolving invoices is going to be an important part of ensuring you're ready for closeout, because that's what will take those encumbered funds. So when you activate a purchase order, you encumber the funds for the purchases. It's the invoice is where you take those encumbered funds and you move them to become an actual payment against the fund. So you want to make sure that your invoices are clean and fully ready for the closeout before the end of the year. Otherwise, your funds are going to close kind of funny, especially if you don't roll over encumbrances. So cleaning up your invoices is in a lot of ways actually more important than cleaning up your purchase orders. For the most part, to clean up your invoices, you do need to run reports. For the most part, you have two different types of reports that you'll run. You'll be looking for one report that's looking at items that have been received but not invoiced, which means that you have marked them as received on the purchase order, but you have not invoiced them. If you're using EDI, that's going to be pretty rare. But if you are doing this manually, that you may have a few that kind of slip through where that invoice simply wasn't put into the system. The other report you're going to run is line items that have been invoiced but not received. And so those are the ones that just about everybody's going to have a few of those. You're going to have more of them now. What you want to do is kind of run this report regularly between now and the end of the year, so that you can regularly keep track of anything that you're expecting. If you do have materials that are coming up on this report that um, that you're worried may have been delayed in shipment, that's something that you'll need to kind of talk to your vendor about. So let's go ahead and run both of these reports. I'm going to be doing this live in production so that we can actually run the reports. And feel free to follow along with me. If you're not familiar with reports and you need a little extra help with this step, let me know. We can either potentially help in live right now, or we can uh, set up a call or something like that where I can get you set up with these between now and June. So the first thing I'm going to do is come down here in the reporter to the shared folders section. And I'm going to expand the templates folder here. And I'm going to find admin. Under admin, I want the centralized reports templates. And then from here, I want to open up the acquisitions folder. So that's kind of a long path. I'm going to put it in chat. So that is the actual path to get to the reports that we need. There are obviously more reports in here than the two that we're actually going to be running. And so I'm just going to use this filter option here, which is this upside down pyramid menu thing, to ask for the name of the report contains. We're going to start with received not invoiced. Oh, capitalization does matter. So it did not like how I had that capitalized before. So this is the name of the actual report we'll be running. So I'll put that in the chat as well. And the first thing I'm going to do is clone this into my own account. And so that's what you'll need to do as well in order to run it. So I'm going to clone this and I'm just going to save it to my shared reports up here. If you have a folder for acquisitions, you can share it to there or save it to there, whatever makes sense to you. I'm not going to make any changes to the template itself. So I'm just going to save it. And then I'm going to come up here to my templates folder where I've saved it. And I'm going to find it. And to run it, I'm just going to double click on it from that templates folder where I've saved it. So running it, this is where you'll actually need to make some perform some tasks, I guess. You didn't need to do anything for the template other than clone it. The template itself didn't need any edits, but in order to run it, you'll have to set a few filters. So I'm going to start by setting the filter for the library that I'm going to run this for. Since I'm now in production, there won't be anything for PAC, so I'm not going to run it for PAC. I'm going to run it for a library that I know does acquisitions. So we're going to do Cumberland County, and I'm just going to do Cumberland headquarters and Cumberland Tech Services. I also need to set the year. So the fiscal year that we are working on, regardless of what you call it at your library, is 2026. I'm going to choose where I save that report. I'm going to choose to get it as Excel and HTML. And I'm going to choose to run it now. Now, if this is something that you want to run regularly between now and the end of year, you can recur it. And so you can decide that you want to recur it, once a week for the next few months. I'm not going to do that because I will forget to turn it off and I will continue to get these reports. So I'm just going to run it now. That's up to you. You can also schedule it to run, say, on Monday or something like that by choosing to schedule a report for later and setting a date. And then I'm going to have it emailed to me. And I'll save and schedule. Any questions before I do this about anything that I set in here? Just to kind of go back over, the filter I set was for my library. Again, this is going to be your ordering agency. So if you order from your system and that is what you put on your purchase orders, it's your system name, then that's what you need to choose here. If you order via branch, then you'll need to do the branch. If this is something that you're going to run this report and then you're going to send it to people, you know, one person at each branch or something like that, then you can run one report for one branch, come back and run the report again for another branch, or you can run everything at once, whatever works best for you. But you're going to choose the branch if your ordering agency is branches, and the system if your ordering agency is the system. You do not need to set anything for state ID. That's already been set. The fiscal year that you'll set here is 2026. And then you don't need to set anything for the ID. That has already been set as well. So I'm going to go ahead and save and schedule. Oh, didn't like something I did. Got that all set. All right. I'm not sure why I'm getting this error. I'm going to just start the process over. This will give you a chance to see the setup a second time. All right, so I'm going to double click on the template. That opens me up into this report interface. From here, I'm going to choose my ordering agency. I can choose more than one. Okay, it worked that time. I have no idea what that error was about. I must have had a hiccup in the system, but we're good now. If you run into errors like that and you're unable to get it to run, let me know. I've never seen that before. So the more instances of it I can see, the more likely we are to be able to figure out what's going on. But hopefully it was just that time. All right, and so now we just wait for it to run. It looks like it already has, and so I can open it up. And it's not too long, definitely a few things. Basically, this is a list of items that have been received but are not showing up on an invoice. And so that's, you know, obviously that's not something that you want because you want the invoice to close out in order to make your funds ready for closeout. So if you do have things like this, the next thing you'll need to do is get those items onto an invoice. So that's what we'll do next. So I'm going to let this kind of sit and I'm going to come back into next and I'm going to show you the process of what to do when you have received items that have not yet been invoiced. If you have EDI, this is going to be really, really unusual. This is definitely not something that happens with EDI. It shouldn't be. If you do find that you're getting a list of these materials and you exclusively use EDI, please let me know. It suggests that maybe an invoice was not delivered properly. So we'll need to dig into what happened there. But if you have manual orders, whether everything you do is manual or you just have one or two vendors that are manual, then this will be the process that you follow in these cases. So I'm just going to come into the purchase order search, and I'm going to find a specific purchase order that I know is the issue. In this particular case, what you'd probably do is take your line item ID or your purchase order ID. And so you would take that in here and do your search for it. So I'm searching for this purchase order. I'm going to open it up and we'll see that everything here has been marked received. We've got 4 items, they're all received, but I have 0 invoices attached. So I'm going to either link to an existing invoice or create a new invoice, depending on what your situation is. We have had some weird things since they did the upgrade that angularized the invoices that have sometimes messed with some invoice linking. So if you have something where you know you received the invoice, but it's just not talking to the purchase order, that's another thing. Let me know rather than following this process. But this is the process that you'll follow if you know that you just don't have an invoice and you need to create one. So I'm going to click Create Invoice. I'm going to fill it in with whatever the correct information here might be. All right, I'm happy with all of this. So all 4 of the items from that purchase order are showing up on this invoice. If you do need to do a situation where, it's just 1 or 2 items, you can also do that. From the purchase order, you would just select the items. And then from the action menu, you would create an invoice from selected line items. So if you only have a few items from from a purchase order that need to be invoiced, you can do them with just a few at a time rather than the whole purchase order. But so we've got all 4 of our items here. And they're already marked as received, so we do not need to receive them at this point. All we need to do is basically say that that this invoice has been closed, and in closing, it'll take this total encumbered of $125 and put it in paid. So we are going to scroll down to the bottom. We're going to click close. We're going to wait a moment. And so now you'll see our total encumbered is 0 and our total paid is 125. So that's fairly painless and straightforward. Obviously, I recognize that in the real world, it's not always going to be so painless and straightforward. So if you do run into anything kind of funky in this sort of communication process, let me know. I'm happy to kind of troubleshoot for you. And if you are following along with me right now and you have found something that's kind of funky, please feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself and talk about it, and we can figure out what's going on. But so that is kind of your first option for what to do with the items on this report. Take the purchase order ID, go take a look at that purchase order. Anything that's on there that's been marked received and is not on an invoice, go ahead and just create an invoice for it. If the issue is coming from EDI though, let me know before doing a manual invoice. That may still be where you end up going, but let me know so that I can check the backlog of our EDI communication and see if it's sitting in there somewhere. If we also don't have it, it's probably best to let your vendor know that that invoice was not received. If you are working manually, and the issue is that you have an invoice and you have a purchase order and the line items simply aren't linking, submit a ticket for that one so we can figure out why those 2 line items don't seem to recognize each other. But hopefully the majority of what you find on this report are things that simply need a manual invoice made, and you can do that, and then you can close that invoice and your funds should reflect the paid status of that payment. Any questions about that line items received but not invoiced process? All right, well, let's take a look at the second report that we want to run here. And that is going to be line items that have been invoiced but not received. Now, this is a much more common occurrence. The first one is something that's only really going to happen if either there's been a hiccup with EDI or if you have manually placed orders and you've received them, but you just have forgotten to do the invoicing step. It's typically going to be a very short list if you have anything at all. This second list, probably going to be longer. And that's okay because it's not really reflecting a mistake or an error or anything like that. It's just letting you know what's kind of still out there, what has not yet been received. In some cases, maybe you have received it and you just need to mark it received. In other cases, you're waiting for it. You've received the invoice from the vendor, the item hasn't arrived. Usually, hopefully there's not a huge delay there. If you're looking at things on this list that have been in this state of received for a long time and you have not laid hands on the physical item, that's a time where you need to open up a claim with your vendor because something got lost along the way. So this is going to be in that same, along that same path within the centralized reports templates folder. The name of the report is line items that have been invoiced but not received. So we're just going to come and follow that same path. Shared folders, templates, admin, centralized reports templates, acquisitions. And then I'm going to filter for a name of the report that matches the one that I'm looking for. And again, there's probably something weird going on here in terms of capitalization or punctuation. Probably best to just read all of the names. I'm just going to do that. Oh, I see the problem. I put the wrong name in my notes. So we've just done line items received, not invoiced. Now we need line items invoiced, not received. And I wrote that down wrong in my notes. So I'm going to replace it in the chat. So you'll want this second one. I'm going to clone this one again. Again, I'm just going to put it in my shared folder. I'm not going to make any changes to it. I'm just going to save it as is. And we're going to go find it and run it. Right, so here's my line items invoiced, not received. I'm going to double click to open up the reports interface. Again, I'm going to choose my ordering agency. So again, this is going to reflect wherever I am ordering from, whether that's my system or branch. I'm going to choose Cumberland again. I always pick on them for this, but it's because their stuff is usually pretty clean. So, but they have a lot. So I'm always sure to find some things, but it's not going to overwhelm me. So I've chosen both of the branches that I want to, that I've placed these orders from. Again, I don't need to put anything here for my state ID. I'm looking for everything that has a value of on order. The encumbrance, I don't need to put anything here for, that's already been set for me. So I just need to put in the year. Again, I'm going to put in 2026. And then I'm going to save that to the folders that I want to save it to. I'm going to put it in Excel and HTML. And I'm going to run it now. And again, we didn't get that error. I still don't know what that error was about. It has saved successfully. It should be running. It is currently running. So this one might take a little bit longer. It's typically a slightly longer list than the other. While we wait for that to run, are there any questions about anything we've talked about so far, or just general questions related to acquisitions closeout? Okay, and so really this report is finding those items that we've got an invoice for, but we haven't marked them received. And it could be that you physically have not received them yet. It could be that you just haven't marked them received, but you do need to do that. Mark them received before you can close the invoice. And of course, you need to close the invoice before those funds will move from encumbered to debited. And that's going to be necessary for the closeout. So this is something that you'll kind of do consistently throughout the rest of this year. So between now and when you close out in June, this is definitely a report that I'd recommend that you run weekly. If not more often than that. If you do a lot of ordering, then you might want to be running that almost daily, just to kind of keep an eye on things, because also if something has been invoiced and it's not received for a significant period of time, you want to probably process a claim, and you want to make sure that you're giving yourself time to do that before the end of the year. So the sooner you know about that, the better. The more you're keeping an eye on this report, the more likely you are to know about that. All right, it has finished running. So let's go ahead and take a look. And yes, this is a much longer list, significantly longer. The process of fixing this depends on what the issue is. Obviously, if we're looking at something that was ordered in, August and we still haven't received it, that's something that we're probably going to need to follow up on with the vendor. More recent things, these things that we're seeing that were just ordered last week, just kind of keep an eye on it. And once that box comes in, we can mark the things received. Let's just do a quick look at that mark received process. Most of you are probably familiar with it, but just as a very quick refresher, we are going to come in here to an invoice that is ready to be received. So we take a look at this. We've got $113 encumbered, $0 paid. You may have a situation where some of it's paid, some of it's still encumbered because you just have one or two items left to mark received. Just kind of take a look. We've got 4 items here. None have been received. I'm just going to receive them all. So I will select them, and then I will come up here to my actions menu and I'll mark them as received. All right, they're all received. My encumbrances are still showing $113. So once I've done that and everything has been received, I can close, and closing moves those encumbrances to paid, and we should be good. Our funds should reflect this appropriately now. So that's the standard process. There's nothing different about that. If you do that slightly differently, if you prefer to mark them received on the purchase order or something like that, follow whatever your standard process is. Now you may also have a situation where you have some items that don't fit into either of these reports. So, we ran a report to see items that have been received but not invoiced. In that case, we created that invoice and then we closed it. We also did a report looking at items that were on order but had been invoiced. In that case, all we did was go into that existing invoice and receive those items. So those are the 2 things that you'll do as a result of the reports. There's also one more thing that you can do to clean up your invoices. There is not currently a report for this. This is just something that you'll kind of keep an eye on as you are receiving invoices. And that is to, when you don't have an invoice at all, the items are just in a state of on order. Hopefully this is something that you're all familiar with, but just as a refresher, I just want to take a look at the process of taking on order items and manually creating an invoice for them. If you use EDI, you probably won't have to do this, but you may have to if you have a couple manual orders or something like that. So for this, I'm just going to find an existing purchase order. Oh, that's the wrong purchase order ID number. So I'll go into my purchase order. This is one that is on order. The items have not yet been received. I can go ahead and create an invoice from this one, just like we did with that that purchase order that had been received. And then the only difference here is that instead of closing it directly after creating it, I would come down here and I would mark my items received. Once I've marked them received, then I will close. And once again, this should take my encumbrances and move them to paid. So I now have a paid amount of $95. So that's, that's a straightforward process, but if you primarily do EDI, it may not be a process you do often, but you may need to if you have some manual orders that need to be closed out before the end of the fiscal year. But that's basically cleaning up invoices. The most important thing is, I think, is probably those items that have been received but not invoiced. You definitely want to make sure that you're getting those invoiced because they're not going to debit properly from the funds otherwise. So if you do have any of those, make sure that you're doing that process. Any other questions about invoices? Got about 5 minutes left to take a quick look at funds. But at this point, what we've done is we've kind of walked through dealing with pending purchase orders and getting them either into a state where they are ordered with enough time to receive those items before the end of the fiscal year, or canceling them or deleting them if we don't intend to order them. And then we've looked at cleaning up invoices where we have looked at items that have been received but not invoiced. We have created invoices for those items and closed out the invoices. We've also looked at a report for items that have been invoiced but not yet received. This is hopefully something that is quickly resolved because items will then hopefully arrive in your libraries shortly after you've received that invoice and you can mark them received, but they may result in you needing to file a claim with your vendor if something was not shipped. And then of course, we've also looked at the process of manually creating an invoice off of a purchase order if you do need to do that. So before we finish up, I just want to take a quick look at funds themselves. We're not going to do the actual closeout today. We've got a few months for that, but I do want to just recommend that you take a close look at your funds prior to that closeout so that you know what you can expect through the closeout process. So to do that, we're going to come in here to acquisitions administration, and we're going to click on fund administration. For this library, I have 4 funds. I can look over here on the right side and I can see that what my combined balance on each fund is. This is basically how much money I have left in that fund. So I've got plenty of money left. I don't have to worry that I've run out. One of the things you may want to do between now and the end of the year is open up a fund. Oh, sorry, not. Edit a fund. That always drives me crazy that you have to go to the action menu to make the edits within the fund administration. So I'm going to open up the edit interface for this fund. And what you can do is, as you are getting close to that freeze date, you can actually put a balance stop percent if you do not already have one. So some libraries leave this blank so that it can allow their selectors to kind of go over budget throughout the year. But I would recommend, if you've done that, that you come in and kind of put a stop to it now. So as part of your intended freeze date. If you're the only person doing anything with acquisitions, the only person making any selections, you may not need to do this, but it can be a helpful warning to you. So I can just go ahead and put in my balance stop percent here. I can do a warning as well. So this is just going to stop anybody from over encumbering any of these funds prior to the fiscal year closeout. You may or may not want to do this as you get closer to that closeout date, just to kind of ensure that everything lines up neatly. You can also at this point take a look at what your propagation and rollover settings are. So propagation is basically this, a fund will be copied into next year. You'll still need to allocate money to it, but you can The fund itself, the name will be moved into next year with the updated fiscal year. The currency type and the owner and all of that will be copied into the next year. And so that'll be part of what happens with the closeout process. If there are any funds that do not say yes in the propagate field, but that you know you're going to want next year, you can change that at this point. So I can come in here to adult nonfiction and edit, and I can just change my propagate radio button to no. It was set to yes. Let's say I don't intend to buy any adult nonfiction next year. So I can just turn that propagation off. And so, oh, I didn't like that. Probably because I have rollover set. Nope. All right, I'm going to try one more time. I'm not sure why that's not working, but we're at 11 o'clock, so I'm not going to dig into it now. You should be able to change that. If something's set to no, you should definitely be able to change it to yes. And then rollover, of course, is your ability to roll over encumbrances or balances. And we'll talk about that as we close out, but it's a good idea to sort of see how your settings are now so that when we're ready to close out, if there are any changes that need to be made, you're prepared to make them then. It is 11 o'clock, but I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes if anybody has any questions. And definitely, as you are kind of keeping an eye on these things and trying to clean things up between now and June, if you run into anything that you're not sure of, please send it my way. You know, better to kind of dig into it and figure out what's going on than to hope it works out. You never know how something could impact the fund closeout in the end. And we've had some weird things with invoices this year that I'm a little nervous about how they're going to impact closeout. So definitely bring things to my attention if you find them as you're cleaning up. Otherwise, I appreciate people being here and taking the time to kind of get everything in a row before your closeout comes along. And I'll let you go.